wanted to make sure that if you felt sport wasn't for you, and you're thinking, this is mental health, this is physical activity, this one's not for me, maybe it is. Maybe you find your fencing. We've got the Olympics going on at the moment. There's such a variety. There's some wonderful young people winning BMX gold at the same time as wonderful young people winning diving gold. There's such a variety, and you don't know which one you're going to click with. You don't know which group of people you're going to end up really enjoying spending time with. Mental health is improved by sports. How to start? We're going to do that. We're going to look at the growing problem of mental health issues in top level sport and how to combat it. We're going to look briefly at what I did in sport. But yeah, we're going to look at those things coming up. So let's push on with this. Hi, you're with Scott. It's Mental Health Monday. It's midnight. It's always midnight. It's Monday. It's always Monday. It's 8 p.m. GMT. It's always 8 p.m. GMT. This is your right ear. This is not. It's just mono. That was the introduction. You have to have it like that to this week because we're all up in the air because of the tea towels and the spilled tea. I'm going to do the intro overview, and this week's intro overview is sponsored by the soap opera that my mum watches in the other room. There's the Samaritans. If you're at crisis point and you need to talk to someone, if you're having a really tough time, we've got the Samaritans there. We've also got Lifeline in America, but I didn't get that up on screen yet because I spilled the tea. So let's do that. There you go. That's America. And there's another one that Nigel told us about last week, but again, I spilled the tea, so this is as much as you're getting. If you're at crisis point, then they're the numbers to call for crisis. What am I doing chaffling on about tea and spilled tea and mugs on Mental Health Monday? We're going to talk about sport today, so there'll be a lot to be gleaned and gained. But if you're at crisis point, you might need to talk to somebody now, and they're the numbers to call. You should also see your GP, because this is what I was going to say. Sponsored by the soap opera, on the soap opera in the other room. As I was just making this tea, getting prepared, there was a little scene where a doctor in the soap opera was being talked to by, I don't know, the lady in the soap opera. I don't know who any of the people are. I don't watch it. I honestly don't watch it. I just overheard them talking, and she was saying, oh, well, if it was a patient and they were going through this and they were not sleeping and they were feeling overwhelmed and they'd lost a loved one and they were going through grief, what would you prescribe? What would you say to them? And the doctor said, I'd just tell them to, go for a run and get more exercise and do some mindfulness. And I thought, well, that's like the mental health stuff that we talk about, isn't it? And then she said, oh, that's such a load of baloney. She didn't say baloney because it's a British soap opera, so she said something British. But she said that's a load of rubbish. That's British as well, isn't it? Trash. She said, look, she was disparaging of that reply, and she basically said, no, you'd prescribe them something, wouldn't you? You'd prescribe them something. You'd say it was really serious, maybe you need a prescription of something, you need some more serious help. And I did think to myself, yeah, well, that's a bit like Mental Health Monday, isn't it? We talk a lot about mindfulness and these things about getting into a good routine, sleep patterns, exercise, endorphins, these sort of things. We talk a lot about those sort of things in general. Yeah, we do that. But also, I think it's worth saying, the doctor might prescribe something, and I've got a friend who's recently going through something. We talked in the past about medication and stuff. I've got different friends who have gone through similar things with medication where they don't feel it really works for them. It doesn't help them mentally. It makes them feel zoned out, zombified. It might not be the right one for them, and they have this bad experience with it, and it compounds their mental health problems. So maybe medication's not every medication is right for everyone, but if you are at crisis point and things are really, really coming down on top, sorry to use slang language like that, but really heavy on you, then seeing the doctor, and even a short-term thing like a sleeping tablet or I don't know, something just to get you through the difficult evenings while things are difficult, even a short-term medical solution like that may be appropriate. And I can't prescribe things on the internet for you. I'm not a doctor, and a lot of people say that they have these negative experiences with medication. A lot of people in America, you've got this big pharma thing as well. But having said all that, a lot of people get some really seriously good results, some really acceptable help through engagement with the GP and some form of medication. So I just thought it's worth saying that. It's not just all going for a run, is it? It's not just all can't all just be a bit of mindfulness gets you through it. Like, sometimes things are really, really heavy, and we've got some, like, if you were really poorly with something else, you'd probably get the doctor to just do what the doctor said. And if it was take some medicine, you'd probably take the medicine. And with mental health, there's a lot of difficulty and stigma attached to the medical treatment through medication. But I don't know, maybe it's okay to look into that as well. Maybe it would help. So there's the intro. That's the intro. Crisis point, you might need medication, ! I've written in my notes. We've done that. Sport news coming. Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do now. I'll tell you what we're going to do all this evening, so you can look forward to it. So you can say, if he's chuffling on about something, at least I know what's coming next. Today we're going to cover the mental health sport news. Have we got a window for that yet? Yeah, look. Athletes face a mental health crisis. We're going to cover the mental health sport news, an overview and introduction to this episode, which is about sport, isn't it? Hi, Snippy Snips. Nice to see you here. Sometimes medicine can make the other non-pharmaceutical methods work better. Yeah, you see, it's a combination of factors, isn't it? It's a combination of things. So we're not going to just say, don't go for a run, take the tablets. We're going to say, try everything. God, try everything. Yeah. Keep an open mind. Everything works in combination, I guess, is a better way of looking at it. Yeah. If I just tell you what we're doing today, sorry, I'm getting a little confused today. And I've laid it all out. I've prepared it all as well. So I'm going to tell you a brief history of my involvement with sport. It's not all about me. It's a little bit about me, but it's not all about me. It's just I thought it would be important to, just say how I've engaged with sport, so that I can tell you what it's like from experience. We're going to talk about how mental health is improved by sport, and how to start getting into sport to improve your mental health. And finally, we're going to look at the growing problem of mental health issues in top level sport and how to combat this problem. Mental Health Monday this week, sponsored by Lewis Hamilton. So, sport news, let's get into it. We've got this first one. I'm going to stay on big face. Stay on big face for this. It'll be better for the edit, won't it, to see my old face. But I'm going to cover up my face on the computer by moving this window around so I can read these things. Right. This is the San Francisco Chronicle. I've got no idea about it. I don't live in America. Don't know if Ann Killian's a left wing, right wing, anything. San Francisco Chronicle. They're talking about mental health in athletics. The Olympics at the moment. The mental pressure at these games is unique. It's absurd to compare, as some have tried to, the Tokyo Olympics to a Super Bowl or an NBA Finals. They train their entire lives for one shot, the pressure building continuously as the games approach. The pandemic and postponement have made their preparation even more drawn out, stressful and precarious. I can't imagine the added amount of stress and anxiety. 2021 was expected to be their year to relax, said Michaela George, an epidemiologist and assistant professor of public health at Dominican University in San Rafael. So there's an interesting article there. That's where we're starting off. Simone Biles, with her 6.2 million Instagram followers. Jeez. Maybe I should talk about it more. Maybe I should find out more and talk about it more. I'm not going to read through all these articles, but I just wanted to bring them up, and show them as the start point and setting to what we're talking about today. And it's going to involve a lot of copy pasting, because whilst I had all the windows open, I closed them all to make it easier. So this is easier, trust me. It takes a little bit of time while they all pop up, but there you go. Look, there's Tyrone Mings. He plays for England in the old football. That's in England, we call it football because we kick it with the feet. The football. In America, you've got a similar game. Well, it's called football, but you're allowed to pick it up. In Tyrone Mings, England defenders' mental health plummeted in the build-up to Euro 2020. He said he felt people were doubting his place in the side. So he's talking out about his mental health this week, August the 1st. That's Tyrone Mings. It's not just Simone Biles. It's not just Tyrone Mings, though. It's where's all my other ones? We'll just look them up like this. Adam PT, and what is he looking at? Mental health. Adam PT decided that he's going to take a break from swimming. He's just won Olympic gold medals. He's going to take a mental health break. And he's saddened by the backlash he faced making his decision. There's another one. Adam PT. I suppose I could spend more time talking about these, couldn't I, and turn them into little snippet episodes. But, it's news, isn't it? I'm not the news. That's the news. That's the news. We're the chat. Here's our YouTube channel again, Mental Health Monday. It's chilling for myself again, chilling for myself. This is what we're building together. Patrons, Ganji Puka Warriors. Really actually pleased this week, because although you can't see the view count, how can I make it show you can see, I can do it there, look. Lewis Hamilton got 63 views. That's quite a lot for our nascent channel, for our early start. These are the uploads, the edited uploads of Mental Health Monday. The things you're watching now, uploaded to the internet, but edited, so all this chat is taken out and just the important bits are in there. Still quite long. But this week we put up a short one about Lewis Hamilton and his podium anxiety. And this story continued this week, you see. We had a couple of comments on that video, which I'm just going to raise here. I'm Boyley. This is their words, not like their names, not mine. I'm just reading them. Said he felt bad for Lewis. He's suffering with long COVID and he needs this summer break to recover after he come out after Hungary, and said he felt dizzy and fatigue after it and Silverstone. So yeah, we're going to directly address that. We're going to look at it. And Simon Hibbard said, did you see the race interview today and podium? Could see it right away. Stress bucket is full. Simon Hibbard there. So I agree with both of these things. Lewis has said that he's got COVID and felt like he had long COVID. So we're going to investigate. We're going to have a bit of an investigate. It's going to be interesting. It's going to set the scene for our Mental Health Monday talking about sport. And it's going to create the ongoing narrative that we want to keep raising about, sport and anxiety. I like talking about COVID a little bit. But we're just going to talk about it a little bit, just a little bit. And we're going to look at it, and it's going to also create lovely little edited videos that might increase the view count on Mental Health Monday. This is Lewis Hamilton in the post-race interview.
Team and to Ocon, he's been a shining star for some time now, so it's been a long time coming. I'm really, really happy for him. And it's great to see Aston Martin up there, the best results so far, and I know there's more to come. And otherwise, just generally had an amazing crowd this weekend, so thank you for all being here. And
there's this backdrop of the race behind him, the actual footage from the race, and in this race there were wheel-to-wheel touches. He had to fight through a long pack of cars, lots of battling, high speed, crashes again. It was one of those high intensity races, and against the backdrop of his, in my opinion, anxiety, and we'll look at the long COVID and the anxiety and the difference and what's going on, but in my opinion, anxiety, it kind of sets the scene of his anxiety, all this going on behind him, this fast movement, and if you look at the way, I'm not going to slow motion and pick bits out, but we'll look now in the second half of this part of the interview, there's a lot of breathing, catching the breath. If you are fatigued, I understand that you feel out of breath, oxygen depleted, so recovery is important. But the way an athlete recovers, and bearing in mind he's out the car, through the thing, done the champagne, this is an interview later on, there's a bit of time between the actual event and now. I believe that he's got a tight chest from anxiety. I believe we'll see in a bit about his comments about feeling lightheaded and stuff and how he feels, but I believe this is all an overwhelming emotional response from the stress and pressure of the race. Now, during the race, you can't unleash any of these emotions. They all build up. You have to concentrate, 100 miles an hour, concentrate. And then as soon as it's done, yeah, you've got the physical thing from the race. I agree with that. And yeah, maybe he's had COVID and he's having difficulty with his general long-term health. Maybe. It's difficult to put a finger on that. Certainly you can say if you've had COVID, you'd feel more anxious about COVID in the now, maybe. But it's difficult to put a finger on what physiologically that's done to him. But all these anxiety responses, all these stressors come after the race in an overwhelming wave, and it's not now that you should be feeling the heart at 100 miles an hour and that test tight. That was during the race. Now it's the relaxation time. But I don't believe Lewis. I think it's very difficult. It's hard to explain this anxiety thing. But when you should be feeling relaxed and instead you're feeling anxious, that means in your mind you're saying, hang on, there's no reason for me to feel stressed now. There's no reason for me to, I'm on the golf course now. I'm out the car now doing an interview. I should be relaxed here. And the fact that you're not, the fact that your body's giving you these responses makes you feel more stressed. It makes you feel more anxious. You worry if there's something physiologically wrong. Now, remember, you're talking to me and the Ganji Puka Warrior crew here. The Ganji Puka Warrior crew, whose chat I have hidden by the things to make sure I've got that up so we can make sure we can see that. Talking to the Ganji Puka Warrior crew, who sent me to hospital to get checked out because I was feeling anxious with a tight chest. And the hospital, the doctors, I said, look, make sure you check my heart. I'm sure it's not anxiety. I've done all the anxiety stuff. And the doctor said, panic attacks, anxiety. That's what they thought. And I was like, well, hang on, it could be all these. They were like, no, the things that you've described, that's the things I think. And so I'm talking from experience, a very similar experience of not really believing that it was anxiety, but then being maybe, told otherwise. So that's what I feel instinctively about the ways. And there's a lot of how do I explain this in body language terms? Self-confidence, self-touching, like rubbing of the head, touching of the face, touching of yourself, making yourself feel like it's a subconscious way of making yourself feel better in a very primal way. Self-touching in this sort of way. And there's a lot of trying to catch the breath, and feeling out of breath, feeling lightheaded going on here.
Today was definitely tough. It's definitely we made it. We always make it difficult for ourselves, and crazy to think we're the only ones on the grid at the start. But these things happen, and we learn from them. I gave it everything, and I have nothing left at the end. So.
Sure. Yeah, I jumped ahead of myself with that 100th win and 9th, obviously here in Hungary. But tell us about not the initial start, because you probably didn't see very much going on, but the second start after the red flag, where you were the only man to actually take that start. What went wrong there?
I mean, I was telling the team how the track was through the lap, but they said the rain was coming when we got in the car, so I thought they had other information, and I saw everyone diving in.
That one really gets me. That I'll just take that back and do that again, because that is classic. Just give me a mental break as well as a physical. Big deep breath there. Compose yourself, pull yourself back into the moment. When you're stressed and anxious, and we'll see again as we go through some of these other interviews, the anxiety, being in the moment. This is a good one from boxing and others. We're going to come on to the other sport. Maybe sport's going to be too big if we just do Lewis Hamilton all the way, but we'll see how we go. When you're head to head in the sport, doing the thing, you're concentrating, and a little mental break, looking over there, tapping your gloves, doing your thing on your shoe. Different sports people in different ways have different things they do, little routines, a little bounce of the ball, giving yourself a mental time where you're not having to do the concentrating. In boxing, it could be bouncing back on your heels a bit, going physically taking a step away from the thing, but subconsciously it can be as small as a glance away from the thing to give yourself a mental break. Little mental breaks, and he takes a big one here. Lewis does. He takes a big one.
Anyways.
Yeah, but you've taken the championship lead. You've got to be happy with that.
And there again, he steps away from the microphone here. He listens to the question. It's not a confrontational question. But here, this is the point. I promise. I'm doing a lot of promising about Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, self-soothing. That's the phrase. If you say self-soothing, I'm doing a lot of promising about Lewis Hamilton because I know, I see this. I've felt these things. So I might be wrong. It might be long COVID here. It could be long COVID that makes you want to step away from the interview all of a sudden. like literally step away from that mic. I believe this was a rising panic. He did the to try and control himself. He listened to the question, and while he was listening to the question, instead of listening to the question, his mind started to run away with him, and the panic rose for a second, and he wanted to step away and say, hey, hang on, something's happening, I'm feeling. And just as he does it, he pulls himself back in. The panic attack, this is building and rising, the panic attack. I think that's what's happening there. Let's just have a little look again.
Lead, you've got to be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, we came in this weekend, definitely didn't know how it was going to go, and considering the circumstances today.
He gets back into his stride there and starts, smiling and talking to camera, back into what I've been taught to do and know how to do, because I've been taught to do it, and I've done a lot of interviews smiling and talking to camera. He puts that feeling down, but at first it's a swallow, a dry mouth. Yeah, this is anxiety, isn't it? These are anxiety signs again, aren't they? These are anxiety signs, stress.
Definitely didn't know how it was going to go, and considering the circumstances today, I'll take it.
Great. Lewis, well done. Thank you.
And he's away. So that was our first one, post-race interview. This is a little bit from a post-race presser. We're going to do a couple of these. I just, you know what, I really quite like them, having a look at this in this way. It might lead to us talking about another YouTube channel that I did one of these days. A bit of body language, a bit of mental health. Somehow, whoever's put this up on the internet, and I will tell you who it is, it's only, let's be fair, for F1. Let's throw them some views, because, for F1, let's throw them some views. They put this particular clip up, and they put it in, I think this grid and all these faces is to help it get through the DMCA, I don't know. But there's some interesting things from this particular point of the question. So we'll do this first bit, and then we'll talk.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling better, and I'm just, I'm grateful that I was able to come and, it's a historic moment for Esteban, so I really...
This is after the race. They're sitting in a group here together doing a press conference. So he's feeling better, meaning from the podium where he was out of breath and lightheaded and all that. Now he's feeling a bit better. And you will, after a panic attack, when it dissipates a bit, you feel worn out. I'll tell you that, you feel worn out. But you do feel a bit better. You can. Everyone can feel better from their mental health. So
I'm glad that I got to share it with him on the podium, and then I really wanted to make the press conference. So, yeah, but it's been a tough day, very, very much so. But I enjoyed the racing part of it, and looking forward to more tough races like that.
He does seem a bit more worn out now, doesn't he? He does seem a bit more subdued, laid back, tired.
Have you felt like this before after a Grand Prix?
After the last one, but only because I went crazy running around with the crowd.
And this is a point I wanted to make. This is what we talked about last week. He went out and ran with the crowd, the flag, and then came back and was having these, anxiety, tight chest, thought he was having a heart attack on the podium, in his words. Have you felt like this after a Grand Prix before? Only after last week. So this is a new phenomenon for Lewis. Fair enough. Anxiety, pressure, it builds. You can be A1, taking it all on, soldiering forward, and it can be building, and it can get to a point that you didn't notice, and all of a sudden you start to see these symptoms. That's how it works. So it's no weakness. It's only natural that after 20 seasons in Formula One, as things are getting to an even more pressured point, as the wins become even more important in terms of legacy, as competitors get even more competitive, as I don't know, for some reason this season seems to be quite a competitive season. As these things build, as Snip says there, anxiety can pop up in your life at any time. And it's not just Lewis. This is a good point. This is an analogy for all of us. Lewis is racing cars, but we're all doing things that are incredibly important, whether they be working in the hospital or popping round to a neighbour to make sure that they're all right and worrying about their health. I don't know. I'm not going to say that struggling to pay your bills isn't anywhere near as important as Lewis racing this car. I think we're all going through stresses in life. I think we're all doing that. So, yeah, let's listen to more of Lewis.
But this is definitely that I haven't had this for some time. So,
like you said, it was quite some race. What was going through your mind when you were on the grid by yourself?
Oh God, in honesty, I didn't understand it all, and I did the start, and again, of course, I was on my own, and I was thinking, I had no idea where everyone else was.
So what was happening was that there was a crash in the race. A lot of cars went into the pits. He started on his own. Maybe it was a tactical choice, whatever. What he's describing is confusion, isn't it? Lewis isn't the sort of person who's normally confused about the state of the race, about where the cars are, about what's going on. And yeah, there was a bit of a crash. These things happen. But he's a bit confused, disoriented maybe.
But obviously when I came in the pit and saw everyone going by, I was like, I can't believe it, just all that work we did yesterday or this past couple of days, and then had a good start in the first one, and it's gutting, but these things are sent to try us.
He says it's gutting. He says, so during the race, this is during the event, he's gone through this emotional roller coaster. He was first on the grid because everyone else was in the pits, and he must have thought, this is great, I'm out in front. And then he realised when he had to go in the pits later that everyone else went past him. Oh, gutted, I've thrown it all away, and I'm going to have to fight. And during the race, he did fight his way back through this pack and ended up getting points. But this emotional roller coaster of the highs and the lows, it's all happening during the race. It's all happening to him. And he says in these such extreme and serious terms, these things are sent to test us. These things are sent to test us is a phrase that we kind of use when we're going through really difficult things in life, like the death of a loved one or something like that. Not being first in the race midway through is not supposed to be, maybe, at the high end of these things are sent to test us, but he really is feeling these, strong emotions. Fair enough.
Whether we like it or not, and we just kept pushing. I just kept pushing with no idea of where I could get to. There were moments where it just felt impossible to get, and I just kept just climbing over that hurdle.
And Lewis is describing the mental health battle, isn't he? He's describing a mental battle. I kept pushing. It felt impossible, to a hurdle I felt I couldn't overcome, and I just had to keep pushing over that hurdle. I mean, he's really capable. He's really handling, let's talk pressure and stress. He's handling it really well in the moment. He's doing the things that he knows he has to. This is why he's such a top racing driver, of course. He's pushing and pushing. He just had to keep pushing. He felt gutted. He felt that it was impossible, but he just had to keep pushing. I commend him for that. I really do. And remember, this is all happening within a sort of half hour, 40-minute space in 100 miles an hour driving a car. But it's all happening in his head, isn't it? It's all happening in his head. This is the battle, isn't it? This is the battle.
And with all of this, you're leaving with the championship lead.
Yeah, it's quite a humbling experience, to be honest. We were a long way behind at one stage, and it's crazy to think we're now ahead. So that just for anyone out there, I think it just shows that you should just never ever give up. Just keep pushing, because you never know what's up ahead. And who would have thought these races we've had and the performance we've had the last two races will be this close. A long way to go, and no doubt it's going to be very, very tough next 10 or 13 races, whatever it is, or 12 races.
11, I think, yeah.
Is it?
11, 12, yeah.
11? I think this is race 11.
12.
Is it?
Got it again.
Okay, damn it. I'm marking all the numbers wrong in my book.
Good positive attitude, keep pushing, keep working through it. Even though they were behind, they're going to push forward, and now they're ahead, great. But he didn't know which race it was. Like, he got the number, he said, I'm marking the numbers wrong in my book, and he thought it was race 11, it's race. That is uncharacteristic of Lewis, and it's characteristic of someone who is spinning plates, dealing with stress, dealing with things, making a little mental, I thought this was that, I made a mistake, little crack in the art. It's not huge, I get it, it's just a little, numerical, but I think it's an example and a symptom of stress, I think. So I think it should be taken quite seriously. I'll make this really clear. I love Lewis Hamilton, and I want him to be really successful, and I think he's even vegan, so I've got a lot of admiration for Lewis, and we're doing this all in the best of faith, to try and help, because I think that he's handling these things, and the way you handle them is what becomes a champion, because these are the pressures of top level sport, and I think he's going through a hard time at the moment, and it needs to be we'll see at the end of this broadcast my ideas for top level sport.
Lewis, we've just been told that you had to go and see the team doctor because you were suffering from fatigue and a bit of dizziness. And firstly, are you okay? And secondly, what do you think caused that? Thank you.
Right, immediately, the playing with the mask, the self-soothing, the long pause, the eyes closed. This is not being engaged with the thing. This is the mental break that I was talking about earlier. This is obviously a difficult subject. I'm not saying this is the panic attack and the stress. I'm saying this is the response to the question that he's been dreading. We're talking about COVID. We're talking about these physical things that he's been displaying on the podium. Everyone can see it. He's worried they can see it. He's worried they're going to ask him about it and how he's going to talk about it. COVID has become perhaps a cover story for anxiety. Perhaps COVID plays into the anxiety. Perhaps he doesn't realise it's anxiety. Perhaps COVID is the reason, really. We'll talk about it now. Let's see what goes on.
I'm okay, yeah. I had real big dizziness, and everything got a bit blurry on the podium.
So dizziness and blurriness, that's something we would definitely associate with a panic attack. If you're feeling dizzy, this is great actually, because we did panic attacks in a different episode. Check it out on Mental Health Monday. We're talking about, the symptoms of panic, aren't we? We're talking about panic attacks in real life. He felt dizzy, blurry, pure, classic panic attack symptoms. The other side of that, COVID. He's saying about long COVID, we're assuming therefore a lack of absorption of oxygen in the lungs in some way, potentially a lack of oxygen in the system, lightheadedness and dizziness, potentially that. I'll say potentially that as well. However, he had COVID a while ago. He's done several races since, and it's only in the last two that these panic and anxiety symptoms seem to have been bubbling out. So I've been fighting. I've been fighting all year already with. And whilst he was, this is pure body language here. Whilst he was answering that question, he was staring into the distance here and almost shaking his head. What he's doing is he's going through a mental list of things that he potentially could say, potentially could think. He's not certain about any of these things. In fact, he shakes them off. No, it's not that really. It's not that. I don't really want to say that. So I don't think he knows. I don't think he's certain. And they're saying the COVID, but I could imagine some men would feel more comfortable blaming this on COVID rather than admitting it's anxiety or panic. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, isn't it? We're going to talk about how at top level sport it could be seen as a weakness, but actually it's a strength to talk about it. It's natural to feel these things. But, we're behind Lewis in this. We don't think it's a weakness. We think he'd be even stronger for talking out and speaking out about it.
I've been fighting all year already with the health, staying healthy, I think, after what happened at the end of last year. And it's still, it's a battle.
And that's all he wants to say on that. It's a battle. It's a battle. He's describing the season. He's describing his life. He's saying it's a battle in general at the end there. I believe people could say, he's referring to the COVID, just the COVID. It's an ongoing battle. Yes, fitness, stress, exhaustion. These, without COVID in that, you could still have all that with just stress and anxiety, and you could still have that battle, couldn't you? You don't need COVID to be in that mix, but maybe it is. And then this is what really, in my opinion, sort of points us towards anxiety and not COVID. So let's have a look at this.
And there's obviously been a lot made about long COVID. Do you think that's something that you're suffering from, given what you spoke about earlier?
So he's directly asked him, you talked about COVID earlier, are you suffering from long COVID?
I haven't spoken to...
Shrug my shoulders, shake my head, meaning I don't think so. In fact, should we do less than big face here? Should we go to web browser so you can see him a bit bigger? See him a bit bigger here. You'll like that, won't you? A little bit of a bigger Lewis Hamilton. There's a...
I haven't spoken to...
shakes his head. Like, he doesn't know. He doesn't think so. Is the signal he's doing there. The shrug of the shoulders is a sort of acknowledgement that he has no answers. You know, sort of. It's also known as the believe me, part of the believe me look. So it might be part of this masking what he really thinks. You know, believe me, I don't know. Did you park that car there? Whose car is that? I don't know. You know, a bit of a one of them. But he's certainly not confident in, you know, if it was long COVID, then isn't he just going to confidently sort of respond to this by saying absolutely yes? So let's carry on and listen to Lewis Hamilton.
I haven't spoken to anyone particularly about it, but I think it is lingering. You know, I remember the effects of when I had it, and training's been different since then.
He hasn't spoken to anyone specifically about it. That's important. So we're to assume he's not spoken to anyone about the mental health aspects or the potential of a panic attack. So he can't say for sure. He knows how it felt after he had it and that training was difficult. I get that. After you've had COVID, maybe you're more anxious in general. Maybe you're worried about your health and your physical response to it. Maybe the anxiety started there and started building there. Maybe you're anxious about getting it again, about people you love getting it and dying. You know, maybe there's more to it. Maybe COVID in general, you know, the fact he had it might have played into it. Who knows?
And the levels of fatigue that you get, it's different, and it's a real challenge, as I said. So just continuing to try and train and prepare the best way I can. Today I think it's, who knows what it is today.
Important. Today I think it's, and he shook his head, who knows what it is today. So he's not saying, definitely I think this is the COVID fatigue. In fact, he's saying he doesn't think it's the COVID fatigue.
Maybe it's hydration, I don't know, but I've definitely not had that experience.
Maybe it's hydration, I don't know, but I've definitely not had that experience.
I had something similar like in Silverstone, but this is way worse.
I had something similar in Silverstone, but this is way worse. So we're now to assume that if it is long COVID, it's taken weeks and weeks and months and months and months and months to really present. And now it's starting to cause, in my opinion, anxiety, the way the anxiety is built. Last week he had his first on-podium panic attack, didn't realise it was what it was. And the stress and pressure of going through the same thing again this week has caused a very similar reaction. And I believe we'll see more. So that's Lewis Hamilton and his press conference anxiety. Yeah, I think we covered that now, haven't we? Ganji Puka Warrior Crew. Do a bit of story time. I'll tell you about what happened once upon a time. Once upon a time, actually not so long ago, the other day, my friend Jimmy, he told me about taking his son to Taekwondo, and about how at Taekwondo, his son, who's not really that bashful and outgoing, you know, punch him up Taekwondo, he's a little more reserved and a little more gentle. His young son, he didn't want to do Taekwondo, so Jimmy had to do it in the end. You know, imagine taking, you know, all the dads sit and watch the kids do it, and instead Jimmy's doing it and his kids sitting and watching. So there you go. When I was young, I didn't really, sports teams and that sort of thing, I didn't want to go to karate and take my shoes and socks off, have my feet out doing the sport in the hall. Didn't really want to do it. Didn't fancy that. I remember doing sports day at school and not being the fastest runner, not being the longest jumper. You know, just not really excelling at that whole environment. Not really. Everyone else was always quicker or faster. I remember football at primary school. This is when I was 11 or 10. We'll say 10. I remember playing football at primary school, and I had one really good game. I mean, I was just a central defensive midfielder. I didn't have much flair. Wasn't able to carry the ball. Wasn't very accurate with my passing. But what I could do was, as people were coming in to try and attack our goal, I could shut them down. I could make a strong tackle, and then I could hoof the ball away towards players generally on our team. So I had a purpose and a role. I felt confident within it. And I was really trying hard to get in the school football team in this particular position. And we had a game to decide who was going to be in the team. And we played this game. Our star striker wasn't able to score a goal in this game because I kept shutting him down, closing him down, tackling him, popping the ball off, hoofing it up the field. I felt confident, felt good in what I was doing. I was good at football in a way. There's a role for everyone on the football field. Trust me, there's a role for everyone. You don't have to be the tallest. You can, Messi, the world's best footballer, he's not the tallest, is he? So, role for everyone on the football field. And then towards the end of the game, I managed to make another one of these tackles, and instead of just hoofing the ball down, I spied the goal. I just thought, why not have a pot? I did a David Beckham all the way from the halfway line, crafted it right over there, lobbed it over the keeper, scored the only goal of the game. My teammates applauded. It was the only goal I'd scored in practically ever. So my teammates applauded. For once, Scotty had scored. Hey, well done, Scotty. And I thought, my place is assured. My place is assured. And assured it was. My place was assured in the school football team. I had an important role after school that evening in the big game because I was linesman. I got picked to be linesman. I had to run up and down the side. I wasn't in the team. I had to wave the flag when the ball went off the side. I gave up. I just wouldn't run up the other end. I was tired and freezing cold. We'd been out playing football. I was already cold, and now my hands were freezing. I had to be the linesman. It was like a punishment rather than a reward. That was the end of my nascent football career. That was me done. Never wanted to play football in school again. Never, just hated it after that. I was linesman. After that exact thing, I had to go and long story short, I had to do homework. I was freezing cold. My hands were blue. I had to try to do my homework with these freezing cold, muddy hands for being a linesman, not even being in the team, for being a linesman. So unfair. So yeah, that was football for me. Then I went to secondary school. But before I did, actually, still a little kid, had some more experiences of sport, had swimming experience, which went quite well. Learned to swim right up until the bit where we did life saving. I could do most of it. I could get the brick out the bottom of the pool. I could do the get you on, swim you back to the side of the pool, hoying you up like that. I could do that. The one I wasn't very good with was treading water. And I remember the exam. I remember it so well. I was only about 10 on this one as well. And treading water, we're in our pyjamas, aren't we? So up to that point, you've been treading water. On the exam day, make sure to bring your pyjamas. You're going to be doing it in your pyjamas. And I thought, fine, that's absolutely fine. Maybe I made a bad choice. Maybe my fleecy pyjamas were a bad choice. Maybe they held more water than other options. Maybe I should have worn something thin and cotton. But in the end, I nearly drowned. I couldn't. It was the exam, so they couldn't help us. They were wanting to, really give you the chance to pass the exam. But I was floundering. I was nearly touching the sides, trying to hold myself up. Basically, instead of passing the life-saving exam, I nearly drowned. So that was the end of that. I wasn't that pleased with swimming anymore after that. After I nearly drowned. Pyjamas, yeah. You learn in life-saving swimming badge thing that to do the final exam, you have to do it in your pyjamas because you might get fallen out of the boat in your clothes, mightn't you? And you have to be able to swim and tread water in your clothes. You have to be able to do it for, I think it was a minute or 3 minutes, whatever it was. And for me, I just head under. Pyjamas are dragging me down. That's what floated. Yeah, but this was I don't know. This was the system. I fetched the brick off the bottom. I could do that. Could swim you over him. Even if I was wearing pyjamas, I could swim you over. But if you just want me to stay in the water and just stay there, drowning. Didn't like that. Not waving, but drowning. That's a good poem that we can look at another day. So yeah, then we did boxing, me and my friend James. This was a really good one, me and my friend James. 11 years old, loved the idea and concept of boxing, went to boxing class. Thought this is the one. This is for me. This is the one. Boxing class was really tough. There was a lot of endurance involved. We weren't allowed to get in the ring. Me and James, all we wanted to do was get our gloves on and get in the ring. But before we could do that, they wanted to teach us, didn't they? They wanted to teach us to defend ourselves, how to do a correct jab, how to time things and move out of the way. And all the time, me and James and I, maybe next week we'll get in the ring, maybe next week. Good lesson, learn to do this, learn to do this. Good lesson. Maybe next week, though. Kept going. A lot of older people there, a lot of grown-up men, like quite tough, slugging that bag. I'm like, fucking hell, chuffing hell. We were 11, only 10 or 11. Chuffing hell. Like, a bit of that going on. I remember the endurance. We had to do this one where you hold your arms out and you make these circles. And it's about endurance training, isn't it? So you're jogging and you're running and you're holding your arms out, and eventually your arms get so tired and you can't hold them out. And I'm 11 and I'm already not, like I said, I'm third place on the running race. I'm not hugely athletic at this point, so my arms are going down and I'm struggling. It was the same as the treading water. I think in this boxing ain't for me. Same as the treading water. I'm struggling with the endurance thing here, but I pushed through it because it became apparent that there was a chance to get in that ring. There was headgear, there was protection. We kept putting it on and having a go, and could you lads stop doing that? You're not allowed to punch each other. Stop doing it. Eventually, after about 9 weeks of training, getting the basics, they said, okay, we'll relent. We've listened to you two 11-year-olds bang on about how you need to get in this boxing ring for so long now, for all these weeks. End of class, last 10 minutes, James and Scott are going to have a fight. And I remember thinking, this is sprung on me. I've been led to believe I'm never allowed in that ring. I've been led to believe you've got to do all this. I didn't expect to be getting in a fight this evening, but here we go. So all of a sudden it was different, and there was no venom between us because I was friends with James. So yes, I absolutely wanted to get in the ring and fight. We absolutely wanted to get the headgear on and do the punching with the gloves. But it quickly became apparent to me that I didn't want to beat my friend. I didn't want to beat him up, and I didn't like him punching me either. That quickly became apparent. I think, was it me? I got a split lip and he got a bloodied nose, or I got a bloodied nose and he got a bruised lip, or we both had a small minor facial injury. Let's just put it like that. I believe, I remember. He'll probably say that he came off clean and I had both. But after that week, we both agreed there's no need to go back. We don't need to. I don't want to do any more punching of my friend. He doesn't want to do any more punching of me. I don't want him to punch me. So that was the end of boxing. And I thought, is there ever going to be? I was learning stuff. I was learning that endurance is tough. Boxing is tough. Is there going to be a sport for me? When I got to secondary school, God, we had rugby. I should briefly alight on rugby. We were forced to play rugby. I remember the first day of games, we used to call it, at secondary school. 11 years old, full form, 30 boys. The other form, 30 boys. Full 60 boys. All of us went to a boys' school, didn't I? All of us on the rugby fields in our brand new, pristine, never used before school rugby kit. Not even a mark on the stuff. Brand new boots, brand new rugby boots, brand new gum shield, brand new everything. Had all the gear, no idea. Running out there, I remember the joke that was bandied around at the time was, I'm about to play rugby like I've never played rugby in my life, because I've never played rugby in my life. So we went out there, and again it was one of these, I kind of was built up to the idea. My dad had drummed into me, you want to be a scrum half, chucking the ball out from the scrum, get those passes. We've been passing the ball in the back garden leading up to this school team rugby selection. So I wanted it. I was up there, wanting it. I was ready for it. I wasn't just carrying my kit down to get changed and mess about. I wanted to be scrum half of the school rugby team. I wanted to be proud of it. I wanted it. And after an evening of getting knocked to the floor for carrying a ball, I didn't want it so bad. Didn't want it so much. There was an awful lot of other things tied into it. An awful lot of other things. My parents' pride and my father's approval, and eventually I did make school rugby team. I think it was B team mainly. I did play in the A team. I think played in the A team, but mainly B team. Captain of the B team at one point. Scrum half for the B team, which I was happier with because it was slightly less aggressive. Slightly, it's all the bigger boys in the A team, slightly smaller boys in the B team. So, happy with that. But I think I told you this story before about how in the third form, we went away to a school, Princethorpe. And they didn't have a B team for the third form rugby. They didn't have a B team, so they did have a B team for the next form or 2 forms above. So we played the 5th formers or something like that, the 4th form, and they were, you know, a marked stage on in their puberty. We got trampled into the mud. Literally, it was raining, it was freezing. Rugby's a winter sport for some reason. You don't play it in the summer for some reason, which I can never understand. Why is it not in the winter when you're freezing? You have to wear shorts even though it's freezing. Your rugby, you trampled on. I got moved back from scrum half, where I was throwing the ball out, getting hit, trampled on. Got moved out to fly half, where I was catching the ball and getting trampled on, to winger, where eventually I'd catch the ball and eventually get trampled on, all the way back to fullback during this game. And in the position of fullback, that's the last line of defence, fullback. So sometimes the ball would come to me and I'd have the opportunity to boot it away, which I thought, this isn't too bad. Although you're getting quite cold, just stood at the back. It's not too bad. Sometimes you can boot it away. And then occasionally something would happen where the other team would be on a charge and they'd all be coming, and there'd be me. And I remember my rugby coach screaming from the sidelines, tackle him. And it was like this, you know, 6 foot 5th former, big. He was a big chuffer, this guy, a big chuffer. This guy, he got the ball, 3 people hanging off him, you know, and he's marauding down the pitch, and I'm in the way. And this coach is yelling, tackle him. And I remember it quite vividly, because it was like one of these ordeals. I did tackle him, he did trample on me, and he scored. That happened. So the next time I learned from my mistakes. There was no tackling, just a, you know, welcome to our goal. Would you like to place the ball down in the centre? Thanks very much. Enjoy your stay. I'd just given up on it by then. Anyway, that was another one of those where in the locker room, I hated the showers. I don't want to go and get in the shower with all the boys at the end of a sports. Oh, thanks, brilliant. Well, and the showers are never nice showers, are they? They're always slightly decrepit and dirty, and they come on cold and they stay cold, and sometimes brown. And you know, and then while you're in there, you got the soap in your eyes, and someone's pushed someone over, and he's just banged his head. Don't worry, your leg will heal. You know, these sort of business. I just wanted to get in that changing room and out that changing room and gone, because once you're gone, that's the end of it, isn't it? You don't have to be doing the sports, having the problems. At the end of games, you go home. From school, if we were having a school match, at the end when you'd finished, you go home. So if you finished, you could, you know, the showers bit was just delaying my going home. I never wanted to do that. Hated the showers bit. Hated it. No, and I'll tell you what as well, yeah, honestly, didn't even want to be naked in front of all my peers. Didn't even fancy that. I was not a big rugby. That last one convinced me as well. After all the trampling, couldn't do the buttons up on my shirt because my hands were bruised and cold. And I thought, this can't be right. You know, where's the future in rugby for me? What do I do? Do I get really good, get into the A team? It gets even worse. The nights get longer. The matches get harder. The people get bigger. The tramplings get more intense. The shirt buttons get harder to do up. Am I going to make England rugby? Do I want to make England rugby? Do I have a few, you know, in 20 years' time, can I see myself on a rugby field, you know, with broken fingers and bashed up ears, being chuffed with it? No, not for me. Not for me. And that was rugby. But, you know, we're going through sports now. I remember the day that this was in the first year of secondary school as well, so this was before this. I remember the day I found fencing. Head injuries as well. And thank you, anonymous gifting tier. Thank you for gifting Caprisund. That was a lovely name there, Caprisund. I hope I pronounced it right, because in England we've got a drink called Caprisund. Caprisund. It's nice, it's a drink, right? So I discovered fencing because Tom and another boy, I remember mainly Tom though, I was in the first year, we were little boys sat in our seats, and these older boys came into our class, taller, bigger. Would you like to play with swords? Yes. Would you like to hit each other with swords? Yes. This is a licensed school activity. It takes place in the sports hall on Wednesdays after school. Come and be hit with swords and learn to do hitting. And that was it for me. I was like, yeah, that's sold. Concept delivered, sold. Thank you, Tom. Always remember Tom for that. Always remember his little lecture. I think Tom and Paul did it, and I always remember them doing that. And that week, 60 of us, the whole form, again, you know, all of us, we were like, yeah, getting hit with swords, doing the hitting with swords. We're all there. The next week, only 30. It's not that easy. You have to wear a mask, you have to wear the kit, you have to learn the techniques, a bit like the boxing, and they're not just going to throw you into a free-for-all 30-man battle royale sword fight. It's an actual sport with some actual discipline. So next week 30, week after that 20, week after that 15. One week when one of my friends, the one with the boxing, James as well, did something a bit silly and used a sword in a way he wasn't, waved it at somebody who wasn't wearing a mask, big no-no. The coach did a big shout-em. My mentor and someone I'm so proud to have been part of their journey in a way. My mentor David, he's more part of my journey, wasn't he? That's what I'm trying to say. He did a big shout-em, tell everyone, and James didn't want to go back the next week. Oh, that man did the shout-em at me. And I thought, actually, he did the shout-em for a really serious reason, for a serious safety reason, where the line had been crossed. And I thought, that man with the shout-em, no other teacher, like, people weren't being respectful. They were messing around. He wasn't. Every single teacher in our school, we would mess around and, not be respectful, take the mickey, except for the really strict ones. And we had some, this is not a Scott School Days extended podcast, but, just setting some tone for sport. But you know what it was like at school. You went to school. You know what it was like. You had the teachers who you could mess around with and no one respected. And you had the other teachers who you couldn't mess around with. And were really serious. David, our coach, was somewhere in the middle. People did mess around sometimes. He allowed some of it. There was a line you couldn't cross. And he would turn serious. And even in the later years of our journey, again, the rugby lot were a bit rude towards the fencing lot. Oh, white uniforms, oh, indoors, oh, wimpy. And also we were in the Olympic team and the British team and the national team representing at the World Championships, and they were on a sort of national level, weren't they? On a national level, so they weren't as good as us. But there was this sort of competitive thing, and also sharing of the facilities as well, I suppose, was a competitive aspect. But sometimes they would overstep the mark with being rude or whatever with David. And he'd shut down the rugby team as well. He'd shut them down. When he said he was in the army. He was a major in the army. So when he decided this was enough and it was time to be serious, it was fucking well chuffing time to be serious. And I actually respected that. Unlike the teachers who lost control in the class, who didn't know when it was time to mess about and when it was time to be serious, I respected that there was a line, drawn, and that this thing could get serious. So yeah, fencing for me, I was enamoured with the whole thing. I didn't drop away. Eventually there was only 4 or 5 of us from that year that carried it on. Aidan, Alistair, Martin, Pete Sol Cameron. There's a few more, there's different ages, generation. I'm not going to list all the fencers, but basically it ended up, like I said, being this journey where in our club we had British level, then world level fencers. We had people who went to the Olympics. Louise represented at multiple Olympics in the female sabre. I was grateful to and lucky to be part of this club where these wonderful people were excelling. I was one of them, and in my life things were really difficult, and it was unlike any other place, unlike school, unlike all the lessons that you learn in school. I learned all the life lessons and things, all those sort of things from the club, from the adventures, from going first of all on a minibus to Bristol and Bath and Somerset and Cardiff, driving around every weekend in a minibus to go to a fencing competition, which was essentially arrive at the school at 4 a.m, put all your stuff in the minibus, wake up at this fencing venue, which was just a sports hall. Every sports hall looks the same from the inside, doesn't it? Do your day's fencing competition, get back on the minibus, arrive back at school at 4 a.m. Sometimes, arrive back at school late in the evening, get picked up. That was your weekend day, Saturday or Sunday, every weekend. And it went from me just being at a competition, getting beat, isn't this fun, to me being competitive enough to be in the final, to win it, to go to a competition abroad. This minibus trip became going on a plane as a squad, as a British team. It was massive. It was everything. It was huge. It taught me so much. So I eventually did find my sport without going on and on and on and waving trophies, and I was going to get the news cuttings and bring them up on the screen. Without any of that, it was massive. I did find my sport. I did find my place, my group. I did commit to it, and it did give me a lot. So yeah, there's a little story. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about from the end, where you don't want to do it, where it's not your sport, where it's not that fun, where you've given it a try. And you've tried, and you've given it a go, but it's not working out. Fine, I've been there. I've been there where I didn't want to take my shoes and socks off and do the karate because I just don't want to. Can we wear shoes for karate? No. Well, then I'm out. That's one prerequisite of any sport, apart from swimming. And even then, can you wear shoes when you're swimming, please? Not me, you. Put your Veruca sock back on. Look, yeah, I've been there. I know that, but I've also been on the other side where I found something that fit. I was able to excel in it, develop, be a part of a team, learn about coaching. I trained and became a fencing coach. I'm qualified as a coach. We had a psychological coach. We had a fitness trainer. I saw an Olympic setup. I went to the National Institute of Sport a number of occasions. Saw other, top level. Went to Loughborough, which was a top-level university where people were doing all sorts of sport, competitions all over the world. Yeah, I've been, seen it all. So it's been brilliant. And I think the takeaway from my little story is what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about sport now after an hour and 10 minutes. We're going to look through the mind bit like we do usually. But I wanted to make sure that we've done all this to start with. No, maybe we started with Lewis Hamilton a bit too soon. Maybe we should have done Lewis at the end. I wanted to make sure that if you felt sport wasn't for you and you're thinking, this is mental health, this is physical activity, this one's not for me. Maybe it is, maybe you find your fencing. We've got the Olympics going on at the moment. There's such a variety. There's some wonderful young people winning BMX gold at the same time as wonderful young people winning diving gold. There's such a variety, and you don't know which one you're going to click with. You don't know which group of people you're going to end up really enjoying spending time with. You don't know which coach is, quietly coaching at the local rugby club or, table tennis youth centre, or do you know what I mean? You don't know where these people are. You've got to go and try these sports for yourself. You might not stick it out. You might be one of the 30 that decided not to go back the next week. That's fine. That's fine, isn't it? That's okay. That's okay. And I remember the first early days of going to these sports clubs, and certainly with fencing, everyone was older than me. It was helped that there were a lot of us started at once, 60 of us in the first, let's all play with swords, and that got whittled down. It helped that there was an attachment to my school. But I also remember going to other, because during this time, I went to a fencing club in Bristol and a fencing club in God, it sounds stupid when I say it now, because fencing club was only on twice a week in my area. I would go to a fencing club in Birmingham and Bristol on the days, so I could go on every week. So I'd drive to, a 50, 100 mile round trip to go to a fencing club on a day when mine wasn't on. So I could do one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like that sometimes. Yeah, I was saying, I remember that going to clubs where I was the only one, where I didn't know anyone, where I was just there for the coaching, where I just wanted to do some fights that night, and I wasn't part of their club regularly. I remember going to these places and feeling like I was the new one all over again, even though it was my sport and, our thing. So I know what it's like, yeah. There's a bit of a difficulty from a mental health perspective of going to a new group, of introducing yourself. Hi, it's me. I don't like talking to people in social situations. I definitely don't want to take my shoes off. Can I just sit at the side now? Thank you. Why is everyone looking? And you all know what's going on. You're all good at it. I'm awful. Can I just go home? Those sort of anxiety feelings. I know what that's going to feel like. So all that packed in now. Let's look at physical health and mental health. Because otherwise we're never going to. With the power of sport and physical activity to raise awareness, tackle mental health stigmas, and support those of us with mental health problems to become more active. We use the power of sport. We use the power of sport and physical activity to raise awareness, tackle mental health stigmas, and support those of us with mental health problems to become more active. That's really interesting, isn't it? We use sport to tackle mental health problems. We use it to do that. That's really, bang on, straight away. home about us, our policy work. This is from Mind. It's part of their policy. Simple way to sort this out. Why mental health is improved by sports. I've got a 4-point list that I was going to cover. Why it's mental health support improved by sports. It's straightforward. I can tell you without having the thing on the internet telling me. I can tell you why it is. You get out, you meet people. That's good for your mental health, believe it or not. Being part of a social group, talking to others, being regularly attending, having a little bit of commitment in your life, a little bit of structure and routine is great for you. Becoming friends with some people. You might not be friends with everyone in the club. Some of them might be younger, some of them might be older, but you might find someone who's about your height and weight and is the right level for a spa. And you might end up talking to them a bit more. That's good for your mental health. On top of that, you've got the added bonus of the endorphins, haven't you? You've got that physical pump, work, mental, literal physical response in your brain produces the happy feelings, the endorphins, the dopamine. You've got the ability, sorry that you feel anxious when I feel anxious, but all about this snippy snips is you've got this ability to, it's almost, we talk about distraction. When you're feeling anxious, distract yourself. It's an ability to not think about the things that are making you that, but actually work on something that distract you, and then the physical doing it makes you feel better because you're achieving something. It's a natural way to it sounds silly to relax by doing something physical, but afterwards even you then relax even more. It's a natural way to relax and to create these good endorphins in your system. On top of that, you've got the health benefits, your heart, your respiratory, circulatory systems working out, being improved, your muscles, the tone. You don't have to be, Mr. Mr. Super Person. Patriarchy nearly snuck in there, but I stopped it, didn't I? You don't have to be a superhero with giant super muscles. You don't have to be the Incredible Hulk. But the physical workout is good. And even going to, now, people might argue with me here, but going to a club and dancing all night and not drinking 20 pints of lager, but dancing all night, physical workout, dance, that's an activity. That gives you a lot of physical benefits, which translate to mental health benefits because you feel better about yourself when you look in the mirror, when you run up and down the stairs. Your anxieties about your heart attack are alleviated because you're working out and doing the right things for your body, those sort of things. So I didn't have to spend 50 minutes working through all their different resources, but these resources are here on mind.org. Mental health and physical activity toolkit, which we might look at another time, because I'm painfully aware now that we're rushing through because we need to get to the last bit. Don't we? Yes, we do. We need to get to the last bit. My ideas for top level sport mental health. So I'll copy that, so I've got that prepared. Work-based training and stuff like that. We're not running a work-based or a webinar, don't worry. But I think it's important to stop on these campaigns as well. This is something that I made a note of and I wanted to talk about, is that sports are great for alleviating mental health by doing it, but also if you're into sport because you watch sport, because you like the tennis or you like the football, they're also doing a lot of good work to promote health and good mental health in communities. And every sport, because there's such a diversity in sport, and if I do this, I'm going to use Google. We don't like Google, we like Ecosia, but it's going to have to happen once in a while. I wanted to do mental health sport scholar, like that, and it'll bring up like a bajillion scholarly articles. And I did look at these concepts. Obviously you can see that I haven't clicked these because there's no need to click a bajillion articles. There are a bajillion about mental health and sport, all different aspects of it, all different sports, aren't there? So it's such a diverse thing. And as we saw earlier, there's no one answer, like this sport's going to fix your mental health and this one's good for this. Diverse opportunities, diverse answers, diverse problems. So what's interesting though is in all their different ways though. Football's got their one thing going, cricket's got their thing going. There's a lot of this conversation coming out now, and a lot of different sports people suffered and have suffered publicly. Like we talked about Lewis Hamilton earlier, maybe the Formula One's going to be next. So that's interesting, isn't it? They've got their own campaigns. On Your Side Partnership, We Are Undefeatable, Sunrise Mind Campaign. That's interesting. Mind have supported us with mental health expertise in designing, implementing and continually improving our Run and Talk programme, as well as supporting us with workplace wellbeing. They're leading the sports sector for better mental health. England Athletics. There you go. Maybe I should call them up one day and ask them if they can help my podcast. I mean, we use enough of their content, don't we? They surely can't be cross. So there we go. I'm not going to do the scholarly articles, but what I will do is paste and go. This is a PDF. This is mind.org, mental health and elite sport, elite. So now these are like the top chuffers. I was talking about mental breaks earlier. I need a little mental break now. I need a little relax. Let's have a bite of the cake. Shouldn't talk with your mouth full, it's rude. There's a great appetite to address mental health issues within sport, and things are improving, but the support for athletes is nowhere near adequate. I believe that football, and sport in general, can lead the way. Clark Carlisle, footballer and Mind ambassador, so he's going to believe in football because he plays football, he knows about football, but he's making the general point, sport in general, and this is true. This is true. One of the important things to say about football is that it might be different in America. You've got to have different sports for different demographic groups, I believe. I'm not, don't quote me on that. I'm not an American sport expert, nor am I American demographics expert, but, I do see the world and the news. But in the UK, football is mainly a working class sport, but it's also enjoyed by everyone these days. Even the Prime Minister pretends to be part of the England support. Even the politicians pretend to be part of the working man's psyche, don't they, to understand things. So most people are touched by football. Most young men are touched by football. A lot of young girls are now being encouraged to play the game as well. So I agree with him. It has an opportunity to lead the way, unlike other sports. Most other sports, doesn't matter how popular they are, Formula One we've looked at earlier, the athletics with the gymnastics and the Olympics and all that, doesn't matter how popular any of these other sports are, they're not as permanent and regular and routine in the daily lives of the mass populace as football. So I think it does need to lead the way. Not just football though. In your country it might be a different sport. I noticed a really interesting thing. all as Capital K would say, it's all tangent. I noticed a really interesting thing. I've got friends who are Polish. In Poland, when I was there was a lot of winter sport, ski jumping on the television. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? You like slightly different sports. And my friends explained they'd got a lot of success in the ski jumping over the years, and that there were some legendary ski jumpers from Poland. And I just thought this is part of the, I've just found tea underneath my keyboard from where I didn't tidy up properly earlier. You'll excuse me. This is part of the nationalisation process, is to have a success in a sport and then to make sure that the mass populace are engaged with and feel part of that, slogan waving, banner chanting. If your mass populace loves football like our country does, and I say our country, we're all from Earth, aren't we, really? But if your population loves football and you don't have success in football, it's hard to wave that banner as much, but you still talk about it and still get to the final and lose on penalty. Anyway, look. But what was happening in Poland was that they were having this success in an alternative sport, a sport we didn't have a lot of success in. So we didn't put a lot of it on our telly, did we? Because we didn't have a lot of success. They did, because they did. So I got this feeling, and as I went to other countries in the world and saw different attitudes to sport, certainly fencing, because I was a fencer. In the UK, no one knew who you were. No one cared if you're into fencing. It's not a very easy to understand sport from a perspective of a viewer. You can't just watch it and go, oh, stop, cut, parry, riposte, point left. You can't just, as an uninitiated person, it's harder to just easily understand in that way. But yeah, in Europe it was more popular, and there was more. It was on the telly, for example, and I was interviewed by the telly for an Italian television, and I was like, "This is brilliant! I'm being interviewed for Italian television." Whereas in the UK, no one gives a monkeys. Yeah, but attitudes are different all over the world. So it doesn't matter what community you're from. It doesn't matter which part of the world you grew up in. It doesn't matter what your local culture is. And it doesn't really matter at all these days about any of that. You know, everything is now open and accessible to everyone. Fingers crossed, hopefully, ideal we should be aiming for. But it's just interesting, isn't it, that different countries have high regard for different sports based on success, based on local culture and stuff like that. I remember watching fencing on the TV. Oh, see, yeah, you don't watch it anymore, no, yeah, because it's not commercially viable. Could be made commercially viable. I'm going to talk about fencing at the end a little bit more, but I'll just quickly say this: that, you know, boxing and fencing have a lot of parallels. They're both martial arts, but in fencing you keep the masks, no one gets stabbed by the sword, whereas in boxing you remove the masks and you actually hurt each other. For prize fighting aspect of it, no other sport like boxing, you know, in the Olympics they wear the headgear. They don't anymore actually, but maybe they should. No other sport, because sport is supposed to be a way of not having to do that combat. I don't have to stab you with the sword. We can just fence and score points. You know, it used to be that fencing was designed as a martial art to train me to kill you, but now we just do the scoring points and we don't kill each other at all, and we're happy at the end to say, okay, you won that one, I lost this one, and what have you. There's not many, like boxing is only, and it's hard. We'll talk about boxing in another episode, not on Mental Health Monday, another time we'll talk about boxing more. But it's interesting, isn't it, that boxing is, and the UFC and that sort of thing, that gone wild with no mask, and it's easier to see who won. Mental health in elite sport. Everybody has mental health, which, like physical health, can change throughout our lives. 1 in 4 people in the UK will be affected by mental illness in any year, the most common being depression and anxiety. So it should come as no surprise that professional sports people face these issues too. So what we're saying is 1 in 4 people will suffer with depression, anxiety, or similar mental health issue at any point, in any year, all the time. 1 in 4. We looked at the classrooms. We looked at our statistics of 1 in, what was it, 30? I've forgotten the statistics. Someone will remind me sometime. But, you know, boom, we've got that big point to make. And of course, sports people are susceptible to it too. Being a top-level sports person doesn't give you... I talked about it earlier, that Lewis Hamilton was maybe at the top for so long because of his ability to deal with this pressure. But being a top-level sports person doesn't mean you're superhuman and can deal with pressure in a superhuman way, and nor should it, and nor should you. But we accept that at a high level, and this is for humans, not just sports people, this is what I'm going to say later, but we accept that at a high level there are high pressures and that you are dealing with them and it's part of your success. We accept that. Following the increasing number of high-profile sports people who have spoken about struggles with their own mental health and some tragic suicides, Mind commissioned research to explore how governing bodies and players' organisations respond to and prevent mental ill health amongst athletes, and to identify successful programmes which can be shared with other sports. Yeah. The experiences of Frank Bruno, Dame Kelly Holmes and Marcus Trescothick show that mental health is relevant to everyone in sport, even at the elite level. Pressures and expectations. Sports people experience a unique set of pressures in their jobs, from scoring goals and winning trophies to facing media scrutiny and meeting the high expectations of adoring fans. While these issues make for an out of the ordinary workplace, in essence, they're all linked to employment. The managers, coaches, clubs, governing bodies and players' unions all have a role in supporting sports professionals to manage their mental well-being at work. And this is what I was going to say, going on later, but this will bring it up for me. So it's not just sports people, they're just doing that job. You know, your unique pressure of scoring goals, winning trophies, talking to the media, that's that unique pressure. Or it might be hitting the golf ball. It might be something different. It might be that at work you have to drive the train, and that's pressure. It doesn't have to be a unique set of pressures, I don't believe. It's unique to sports people because we're not all interviewed by the media after our sport. It's unique to sports people in a way because they're scrutinised more, maybe, because we're interested. Oh, how did you play? What was the kicking like? Can you tell me about whether you kicked that in a good way? Thank you, please, on the interview. Let's talk to Lewis Hamilton, see what he's thinking after that race. I don't ring up the people at the power station and say, have you had a good shift today? The lights stayed on nicely for me. How are you feeling? That doesn't happen. But they're going through similar pressures at their work. Everyone's work, I imagine, maybe not for some, but for most of us, common people we talked about before, normal people like us, we're normal people. We're facing pressures. We're going through stresses, and it's our whole lives. It's the main thing. It's the pressures, our relationships. Okay, we're all going through that. But I guess we're not all interviewed about it afterwards, are we? We're not all asked to be rated by 20,000 people. They're not all going to start shouting at us if we do it wrong. The public perception is not on us all. Maybe it comes on different people at different times. Maybe that day that you accidentally fail to put the petrol pump back and throw your cigarette on the thing and blow up the whole petrol station, maybe you are under public pressure that day. Because maybe you end up in the news. Who knows? Maybe sports people are expecting to deal with it, and maybe other people have to deal with things like that out of the blue. Maybe sometimes somebody says something on Twitter and everyone starts coming over to your page and shouting at you. Who knows? What I'm saying is that they say they're under a unique set of pressures in elite sport, but what I'm saying is you're suffering with the same pressures too. Not the same, but pressures. And if it's everything to you, the way work is, the people you spend time with at work, the way that fucking chuffer won't stop being mean to you, and they're your chuffing boss, so you can't say anything back, but you have to get the work done because you need to put the food on the table. But if you have to get up and listen to that chuffer talk to you like that again, what are you gonna these things are building. That's the same pressure, isn't it? It's pressure. It's not like they've got a unique pressure because theirs is sport pressure and theirs is football pressure. They don't go home and say, "Oh, thank God my stress in the press conference is different from Hassan, who is in charge of the nuclear rods at the reactor." Hassan doesn't kill us all on a daily basis. So thank God I don't have the same pressures. It's all pressure, isn't it? It's pressure, stress, whatever. That's why I believe Lewis is suffering from these things, and why we can see it. Our research I'm under pressure trying to read and open up websites. Sounds silly. Our research identified 3 particular mental health pressure points for professional sports people. Oh God, all the P's here, aren't they? Particular pressure points for professional sports people. Our research indicated 3 particular pressure points for professional sports people, coinciding with the times of key transition. I'm peeking into the red. Oh, don't peek into the red. Don't like that. I don't want peeking into the red. It's a roller coaster emotionally. The threat of leaving the game is constant. Will I get to the next stage? Will I be dropped? Will I get a contract or be released? What happens if I get injured? What happens if I retire? Yeah, I get that. For sport, I get that. I never got paid doing sport. I had to, fund it. I get that. The stress of it all. Will it work out? Will I get onto that team? Will I make it to the England team? So I had that exact pressure. Will I make it to the England team? Will I make it to the British team? Will I get dropped? Will I be in a contract? It's even more important when it is your life, when you are paying the bills with it, I suppose. What happens if I get injured? Those sort of things. But that's everyone, isn't it? Isn't that, again, if you're Stan driving the train, or if you're Brenda serving the sandwiches at the cafe, the threat of getting promoted or losing your job, or getting injured and not being able to work. This is why during the COVID, people don't want to tell people if they've got it and get pinged on their app and self-isolate, because they might lose their, even though the furlough is supposed to, this is all plays in, that's everyone's day to day. Yeah, I get that. They talk about these things, leaving, retirement. This is for top level sports people, really. So Lewis Hamilton might want to look into this, and we're going to just push through a little bit quickly. But I wanted to highlight these bits because I have read this before. Gary Speed took his own life in November 2011. It acted as a catalyst for the change in the football world. Several high-profile retired football players, including Stan Collymore, Neil Lennon and Mind Ambassador Clark Carlisle, have spoken of experiencing mental health problems in their playing days. So Gary Speed, and I remember Gary Speed playing, not everyone who's listening to this is going to care, but I remember Gary Speed playing football. And a vibrant, flair player in a way. He had a bit of flair about him, I would say. For him to kill himself, it did baffle me. I remember when I was younger, I thought, what the chuff? Gary Speed's dead and he killed himself. Rugby League, the death of Terry Newton, an England and Great Britain rugby league professional who took his own life in 2010, had an impact on the entire rugby league community. People came together, campaigned to improve mental health. I talked about rugby earlier. I don't follow the game that much, but any rugby player who's been through that baptism of fire, who's got trampled on, who's in with the boys, and I say boys, that's the patriarchy again, isn't it? Women play rugby these days. That was really patriarchy of me, so I shouldn't. That was silly of me to say boys then. But you know what I mean. It's a strength game, isn't it? It's a strength game, and any rugby player who achieves England and Great Britain success, you don't think about, oh, they're going to be the ones that have got the weakness. The weakness. You see how I'm saying it now as well? The weakness. That are suffering, that need the help. But 2010 killed himself. Entire rugby league community come together. 2010 rugby league, and then cricket. I've had a welfare drive, and my matters have been involved with that. Thankfully, we haven't got a sad, tragic tale of a suicide in cricket there. But these are the big games, athletics and swimming. As we start to get that diversity, we're not going to know all the people that tried out for the swim team or didn't make it on the athletics camp, or we're not going to know all these names that maybe have suffered in these ways. But what I wanted to highlight here is that 2011, Gary Speed killed himself in 2011, and Terry Newton killed himself in 2010. So that's like 10 years ago. That's like modern times. That's after the millennium, isn't it? That's post-millennium. All these millennials, it's when they're growing up. That's modern though, isn't it? I mean, it does baffle me that it takes for internationally decorated, popular players to end up having to feel that they should take this course of action. Going back to Samaritans, if you're feeling suicidal, anyone's suicidal, going back to Lifeline, if you're feeling these things, there are numbers to call. It shouldn't be that in 2020 we're talking about this, because 10 years ago people are killing it. It's how it is. That's how it is. But it baffles me. And you can also talk about people in popular culture, can't you? Like the singer in that band that you like, the one. You do know the one, the singer in the band that you like. How is that happening today though? But at least we're doing something about it now. We're trying to, I guess. But in top level sport, it got to 2010, 2011. It got to 10 years ago before people said, look, we're going to have to start doing something about it. And this is what they did about it. They found out there's no one size fits all solution. Every sport has a different need. Every person has a different need. Through the different structures through which they're organised, there are some excellent initiatives out there with real potential to share best practice and learning between sports. So what they're saying here is it's different for every group. I get that. Your sport might be set up differently to their sport. You might have to all meet in the sports hall. You might have to all get out on the river. I get it. It's all different, and there are different levels and different things. But really what they're saying at the last part is there are some good, excellent initiatives with the potential to share best practice and learning. So what they're saying is the people who are doing it well out there, we need to learn from them, because we don't really know. Potential to share best practice. What is the best practice? Let's find out. Excellent initiatives. They're taking the initiative. They're already doing it. They're we're not prescribing to them. They're taking the lead, and they're doing excellent work. And they're not picking any particular one. As we said earlier, there are all these different sports. But what they are saying, I think is worth highlighting, is that we need to learn more between us. I think there should be more cohesive sporting cohesion, mental health. It doesn't matter if it's athletics or swimming or rowing or running. There's a more general mental health support there might be good. There's a need to build on and cascade the proactive mental health initiatives started by individuals and player associations in collaboration with clubs and across team sports. It's a long-winded way of saying we need to do more. And cascade is this sort of marketing speak. A raft of content, a cascade of initiatives. We need more people doing more stuff. And what they mean by cascade is that people see the big, the football club doing something, and so they say, okay, if they're doing it, we're going to do our own version, our smaller version in our street. And if the people in the street see it happening, they might do their own version at the allotment. This knock-on effect. So we're part of that. We're part of that. The cascade. Oh, lovely. But in collaboration, maybe more people need to come together and support me to help me do it. Is what they mean there. There is more to do proactively to support professional sports people, all people, I'm going to say here as well. This is focused on sport. If they can't get it right, if they haven't managed to support the professional sports people, massive point here, massive point. When we're talking about Lewis Hamilton, where is he? When we're talking about Lewis Hamilton, he is the figurehead of their endeavour, and their endeavour is a multi-trillion-dollar endeavour. We're not big on polluting the atmosphere here. We're not big on the promotion of the petrol engine, really. We believe that it's time for that to go by the wayside, and electric vehicles should be the future. I get it. But he's the figurehead of this multi-million, billion, trillion sporting. The amount of money that goes into this is huge. Mercedes, the banks there, the finance, all around the world, all the tracks, all the VIPs, Tom Cruise turning up. It's huge money. And all that money that flows through it, he is the one that crashes the car or takes it over the line. He's been there in that seat for a long time. So he's worth the investment, isn't he? These sports people, these people that score the goals, that make the chip shots, that sink the putts, that hit the 3-pointers, that I'm trying to think of some ice skating terminology, that are able to perform the arabesque. Is an arabesque, toe spin, toe twirl. These people that do the tricks, that do the things, that these people that are on the front line. There's a team behind them. I absolutely get that. There's a huge team behind them. They build the car. They put the engine on. He's the one answering the questions out in the front, winning the race, crashing the car, like I said. So taking the risks, feeling the stress. They're all feeling it. They're all part of it. But if they can't even invest in him, I thought this with COVID as well. With the COVID, we do a little bit of talk about the COVID. With the COVID, I thought this, that sports teams were very quick to get back to business because it's business. I remember one of my friends saying, I wonder if we'll even see a European football cup. I said, absolutely you will, because they've paid for it. All the promoters, all the sponsors have paid for it, and they want their... Will we finish the Premier League this season when COVID hit? Shut down, lockdown. Will the Premier League football continue? Yeah, behind closed doors, because we've paid for these games and we will deliver. Well, our contract says we will deliver this number of football matches, so our broadcasters will have this number of football matches, otherwise we go to court. So yes, absolutely we will. Does it matter if we're spreading COVID around? A little bit, but we're going to pretend we've got our own bubble and our big bubble, and whatever, rules don't apply. At the end of the day, money's big and important. So if money's so big and important that you all have to get back to playing and doing it, I realised that they were getting lots of tests, that they were having serious rules and restrictions. Some of the people were highly criticised for having parties where they spread COVID around, and then the rest of their team, you can't play for the team this week because you spread the COVID. Highly criticised. All that went on. But really what I was noticing was this big money train had to make sure the sport carried on. And it turned out, second place was the health of the sports people themselves. And I always thought the big money train put the sports people themselves at the top. But you know what? There's always another person willing to get in the driver's seat. There's always another person coming up through the ranks who's desperate to, play up front, score the goals. There's always another person who wants to be in the gymnastics team, even if that horrible doctor, I'm not even going to go there, but you know what I mean? Like, horrible things happen, people want to get in that chair and want to be the one. So maybe they don't invest in these people in the same way. Maybe these people are, Mercedes goes on, doesn't it? The car continues, the company continues, the drivers, they go down in history. They take the risks. Some of them even have died in pursuit of sporting accolade. But the car goes on. Ferrari's still here. Ayrton Senna's not here, but the Ferrari's still here. So I don't know. No, maybe they don't invest in these people in the way they should. Maybe they don't care about them. I always thought they did care about them and value them. That's the word, value. How to solve mental health in top level elite sport. Some ideas, some tips. 1. Performance matters, mental health in elite sport. How to fix it. That's their tips. I've got some tips. Number 1. When's he ever going to finish with his tips? Number 1. Team effort and substitutes. No star player policy. So what I mean by that is that it's a bit ridiculous and unsustainable to suggest that you would have one star player who dominates your sport. It's been the case. It's the way certain sports seem to pan out, the way they seem to play out. If you have such a fantastic athlete, you might want to rely on them more. You might want to build your team around them more. But that's a mistake. As a coach, as a development, I don't want to say executive, because we have those in football, the executives who choose players for the future and development and team and strategy. To pin all your hopes on one player is a mistake. I know the top level clubs understand this now. I know they understand this. It's strength in depth. It's not relying on one person, not putting all the pressure on one person and being able to swap them in and out. If you've got a team sport, it's not possible in some individual sports, I understand. But if you've got a team sport, it's so important to make it a team sport and to not put all the pressure on a top player. And even if you have a top player, to not utilise them, to build the thing around them in that way, to see it as a team sport and to understand that the appliance of pressure onto this one person will actually negatively affect them. And when that happens, you still get these individual performances, you still get these peak performances out of them. By making it a team game, football, it doesn't mean that Lionel Messi doesn't mean that Lionel Messi is out of the game and doesn't be part of it. It means that he's part of it more because he's able to affect the whole team. It's important. It's important. So no star player policy. I think that's important. Number 2, calendar events is packed for peak profit. There's all your P's again. Rules for qualification, world championship points. It means you can't miss a race. You can't miss an event. With the Formula 1, we're seeing this pressure build upon Lewis because every week you have to have a race in a different part of the world. You have to fly there every 2 weeks or whatever it is. You've got this calendar pre-planned out, and it's planned out for money. It's planned out to get the most financial benefit, the most profit out of a season, to get the most people watching it, to get the most sponsorship time, to make sure you've got an event in every... It's not planned out with the benefit of the mental health of the drivers, is it? That's not really taken into consideration. It's not been taken into consideration for a long time. So maybe some comfort of the drivers is taken into consideration. Football, they talk about their fitness levels, making sure they've had enough time to rest in between matches. But that's it. As long as you've had enough time to rest, and even if you haven't, get them out on the field again. Maybe substitute them in and out. But the concept of having a schedule that's packed, certainly with the Formula 1, not being able to miss an event because that means you can't win the championship, that adds all the pressure, doesn't it? That's where it's all come from. Maybe we need to pull those apart a bit to say 1 or 2 races. It would be so difficult to change the way sport is organised. But I noticed in the gymnastics at the Olympics, at the surfing and the skating and the BMX and things like that, you did 5 runs and you took your best 3 scores. So there wasn't such pressure on each run. Maybe having to compete every week in, week out. Maybe every athlete should be given a 1 week wild card. Maybe you're forced to sit a week out. Maybe every team can't race every race. Maybe you're forced to sit a week out for your mental health. Maybe this is your week for a break. Maybe that's a good thing that you could build into the system. So it's still fair, but it gives everyone a break and everyone has an opportunity. Go back to basics, number 3. This is point 3 now. Go back to basics. Realise why you love the sport and give a bit back. Returning to smaller competitions as a reference. I often found that my most enjoyable competitions were not the ones where it was high pressure, high level. Of course, they were my biggest memories, the biggest events that I attended, the greatest achievements, my trophies and my medals. But the ones I really enjoyed were the ones where the pressure was off, where I wasn't expected to win maybe in the early stages of my career because everyone was better than me, so I could just have fun, or where I wasn't even competing, where I was a referee or helping to organise. Maybe it was the younger generation, maybe it was an age groups competition and I was a referee, or like I say, just there to organise. Those are really enjoyable times because I love the sport. I love being part of the sport and not having to win and lose and pressure. It didn't take away the fact that I loved the sport. I was able to enjoy the day watching other people compete. So sometimes going back to the basics, going back to the old club, the old fencing club, going back to the level a bit lower, not having to push yourself that hard, having just a fun session, having a weekend where you're at the competition, not to compete, but to take it in. Goes back to my previous point of having a break week, of having break weeks mandatory for different players and teams and things. It gives you the opportunity, though, to return to the basics of why you love the sport. And then that gets you back into the frame of mind of let's enjoy the sport, let's love the sport. And that's a good, healthy place to be in. Point number four, top tips, Scott's top tips. Develop a better competitive culture. This is a big and complex point. At present, there's still venom in sport. Cheating, attitudes, competition, dog eat dog, fight to the top, wheel to wheel, those sort of things. And this is where Lewis Hamilton is right now. Crashes, wheel to wheel, in the cut. It doesn't have to be like this. I might have used the phrase cut differently to your culture. I'm cutting you from the cut. It doesn't have to be like this, though. We've all seen competition between people who are bitter and angry and competitive in that way, but we've also seen competition between sports people, and we call it sports people because it's part of the ideology. Is it part of the ideology of sport? To be a good sport, to be a good competitor, to have a healthy attitude to competition. So we've all seen competition between people who can shake hands at the end, who are happy for the other person to have won. And it's actually that's the better part, that's the more healthy, that we want to put up as an ideal, as a good role model for young people, that we celebrate. The bad things, the cheating, the meanness, the spoiling tactics, the professional fouls. We don't like them. They're not held up in high regard. They might mean that you win, but if it's not winning in a good way, a healthy way, we don't like it as much. So this is a big point in my top level sport ideas for mental health. Let's make sure that we encourage that positive competitive culture, that it's not winning at the expense of someone else losing and we're trying to grind their nose into it and hold them down. It's about us all winning together as a group, as a sport, because sport is supposed to make you feel good and happy. We don't have to shoot each other and have a war. We can have an Olympics and shake hands at the end. I don't know, it's supposed to be good, isn't it? So I did actually find this. We should finish with our final. I say finish, I've got 4 more things to make points about, so it'll probably be half an hour. But we'll go through it, we'll do it. What the hell? Paste and go. Having said that, that thing that I just said, leading the way on mental health, from publishing a consensus paper with recommendations for athlete mental health to support hosting webinars about staying mentally fit during COVID, the International Olympic Committee and Athlete 365 have actively increased the support available to you and driven the conversation on mental health. And I've read through this, they're right, they have. They're doing a good job, the International Olympic Committee. But if you're not an international Olympic sports person, you might not have seen this. I certainly didn't. It's worth looking at. I brought it up on the screen there so I'm doing the work for your Patreon dollar. I'll paste that. I do really appreciate patrons. Check out my Patreon sometime. This is the International Olympic Committee Sport Mental Health Recognition Tool. Tool, right? I can't say the word tool. It's an actual piece of functioning worksheet. It's like a thing you can use. Okay, it's the International Olympic Committee, but we can all use it. Mental health recognition. What it is: sadness, anger, stress, part of the human experience. If these problems persist for long periods of time, they have an impact on someone's career or daily life. They might be having a mental health problem. As a coach, or if you're in management of athletes, you need to be able to sort this out. This is how you can spot it. This is how you can see it. We'll look at this in greater detail another time, maybe. These are red flags. I should do a video on this. I'll do it this week, maybe. Comments relating to others, feeling about hopelessness or overwhelmed, dramatic weight changes, other uncharacteristic behaviours, emotional or appearance changes, an episode of overwhelming onset of fear, physical symptoms. And this is Lewis Hamilton. Physical symptoms such as sweating or shortness of breath that's not been experienced before or is different from prior episodes, could be a panic attack. So this is like a fact sheet for if you're in sport and you're dealing with these sport people, Olympic Committee, everyone should have this. They should be able to spot it and intervene. So that's great. British Journal of Sports Medicine, that's great. Publish that for everyone. Get that out there for everyone. That should be something that we know for our friends. For our friends. That's why we'll do a bit more on that another time when I'm, not at the end of the episode. And my final thoughts, and I will give you my final thoughts now. And if I keep, for me, I've been talking now for 2 hours. And I do appreciate it. I love the sound of my own voice. I love it. But come on, I can't keep talking for 2.5 hours. I've got to have a break. So my final thoughts, the things I wanted to make sure I tell you about, this little story I wanted to make sure I tell you before we go. And look, thank you very much for the gifted subs. Aiton, I've seen Aiton's name before as well. I'm glad to have you here, Aiton, if you are here. I've seen your name before. I appreciate it. Capital K. Subscribe to Ganji Kid. Yes, that's what you have to do. You have to go look at our YouTube channel there, Mental Health Monday. We've also got one called Ganji Kid. You know what? I'm not going to type it in. You can find it. You'll find it. Look, you'll find it. That's us. You'll find it. You'll subscribe and share and all that. I appreciate it. I really do. And the financial contributions from you, the Ganji Puka Warrior crew, who are part of this media project. I think it's magic that it's not just I'm doing a show and you're watching it. You're the producers, essentially. You're the producers. You'll find, if without you, I can't do it, and if I can't make it a sustainable thing, I can't do it. So, you're making it happen. So I really appreciate it. I do appreciate it, and we want it to be sustainable. I'm prepared to admit that. I want to be able to say, look, I'm able to eat food because I do this thing on the internet. Not just Mental Health Monday, but generally media production. Right. I've said that. We're doing that. My little story at the end. Fencing. I should get a picture of a fencer. Oh, there's Simone. Let's have a picture of a fencer in all their gear. It's not this guy, but I'll get him up anyway. Sabo. Fencing. His name was Sabo, but he wasn't German. But he did look like this in this kit, all this kit. His name was Sabo. It was the Munich Open, and I used to look like that in my fencing kit. We've been competing all day, the Munich Open. We used to go there every year, and at the end of the evening, because like I said, in the European countries, it was bigger. They had the finals in like a separate room. So we'd all been competing in this big sports hall, and then they had this finals hall, like a separate room, and a stage, and seating, and it was like an event. So quite often we wouldn't get to see it, but this year we were doing 2 nights. We were doing the 2-day competition, another competition the next day in the same place, essentially. So this evening we were staying to watch the finals, and they're setting it up in this big room and setting up the chairs, and the people who got into the finals, the final 4, I think it would have been 3, 4, 6 fights. Anyway, there was probably 6, 10 different weapons, group of fencers doing their little bit with their coaches, warming up in the sports hall. Still, by this point we've got changed. We're out of our kit now. We've had our shower. We're in the bar, RT, the British contingent, because none of us made the final that year. Others did in other years, maybe. I think Robin Knight came very close once. What a great name for a fencer, Robin Knight, fighting with swords. Anyway, Sabo, not this Sabo, but a Hungarian he was, Sabo, this guy, Hungarian I think he was. He might have been Czech. He was in the final, like the main final. So big. I think they did the semis and then the final. We watched some, did the sword fighting on the main stage. Everyone's watching it. We're in the bar. We're popping in. We're having a watch. Then there's a break and like a intermission. Everyone's in the bar at this point. This guy Sabo has fenced his way into the main final, the one-on-one, the final. It's break time. We're all in the bar. All of us Brits are enjoying our beers. Isn't it a great evening? Haven't we enjoyed fencing? All the other people, all the Germans, some Italians, mingling, having a beer, ready for the final. And in walks, in full fencing kit, bear in mind. This is a bar, like just next door to or attached to, it's a big venue that we're in. So this is the bar in the venue. In walks to the door, in full fencing kit, mind, Sabo himself, the finalist. Now, at this point, everyone else, moments before the final, the half hour before the final, is usually doing a bit of training, a bit of warm-up, a bit of cool down, a bit of refuel, whatever. He's fenced all day. He's in the bar in his full kit, bear in mind. He hasn't got time to change, has he? He's in his full kit. And he's at the bar. I'll never forget this as long as I live. He had to sort of fight. So people were like, out the way, because he needs to get to the bar quickly because we haven't got long before the final. So people are like, out the way. And he gets to the bar and he says, "I'll have a beer, please." And they do him on the continent. You have litres and half litres. We have pints in the UK. But you ask for the bigger one, the litre. So you get the big beer. And he chuffed that. Like, they put it down in front of him and he and he downed the whole thing. Chuffed that beer back. After that he had a half, like a smaller, like a mini beer to settle it down with. A few conversations, a few cheerses, a few good lucks, and then he left the bar. And professional athletes, high quality athletes, you don't expect that they're going to join you in the bar for a beer before the big final, do they? But he was so relaxed and, natural, talkative. He went on, won. He won. He won the final. He beat a really top quality, high quality German in the final. Doesn't it slow reaction time? Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not good advice. It's my little story to finish it on. And I'll tell you what the point of the story is. The point of the story is that he did everything with a smile on his face, this Sabo. Like, he was smiling in the bar. You think about the pressure of the final, the pressure of fencing in the final, of the one-on-one competition. It was all gone. He's having a beer. He's having a chat with his mates. He's having his photo took. These days, we didn't have the snappy photos back then with the mobile phone. So, but he's there talking. It's nice to meet you. Are you in the final? You're in your gear. Like, people who weren't connected with that evening's fencing competition and seeing this guy walk in his full kit. Like, what are you doing? Like, it was a bit of fun, wasn't it? We were all having fun. And that's what I wanted to bring it back to: enjoyment over everything. Enjoyment over everything, because that's what it was all about. I was going to do a big piece on my fencing coach in this episode as well and get all emotional about him, but we do that every episode, don't we? So we don't have to on this one. We don't have to. But enjoyment over everything, isn't it? It's just enjoyment over everything. The finalist was able to go in the bar and have a beer. I'm not suggesting drinking. We're not big on. I don't drink alcohol, but just having some fun. That's what it was all about. And when he got to the final, he was able to enjoy it. And he won. So there must be something in that. So going back to Lewis Hamilton and all that, everything we talked about today, sport, the freezing cold, the showers, the finding a sport for you, the pressures, even at any level that you feel in competition, the looking at competition as an opportunity to be a good sportsman, to spread those positive values, to share in the enjoyment of the event. And if it's you that's the one that's winning it, that's out there in front, you get that feeling, that thrill, but to not let that corrupt you and turn you into something that, to not let that take away from the enjoyment. Because if you can't enjoy coming third, coming second, coming sixth, then you shouldn't enjoy the win. And if you only enjoy the win and it spoils your enjoyment of third and fifth and sixth, then it's not so enjoyable, is it? So yeah, that's my little takeaway point, isn't it? That's my little nice point at the end. And now in the world of Scotty Hottie, where I live, it is actually 10:30 at night, and the doggy will need a walkie. He will need his walkie now. He won't just want it, he will need it. So I am required to go and shuttle a small animal around a block. You are required to be good, my little pucos. Be good. And you have been good, and I really appreciate you being here. And if you can't be good, chuff off down the bar and have a little beer and just forget about it. Relax. Don't go to the bar and have a beer. That was terrible advice. Oh, I'm naughty.